How's the sound? Boy, is it a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Here we are where the late summer rains and the autumn temperatures conspire to make this the most glorious time to be in Arizona. I am blessed to be here, and I am Fred Wooden. I am your interim minister, and for the first time in over a year, I get to behold the people I serve. But we are also serving the people we do not see directly, but they're out in Zoom land, where you have been for so long, and yet we are together as one people. We are now over halfway along that journey from the pandemic to back to a world where we are not hiding from one another. We're over halfway on that journey toward you choosing your next spiritual leader. We are meeting in a sanctuary that for the first time in 18 months has its people within it. Our young people are here. And though the pandemic has not ended, and we are being cautious even now, I'm wearing all 3 wristbands to remind you to look at everyone you see and respect their boundaries. Because sometimes a red wristband means love me from over there. And the further you are, the more you love them. It means that we care for one another in new, more tender ways. The same way we care for the land, the water, the nation we love. And though we are still on our way, we can pause today, this Sunday, take a deeper breath and enter an autumn season with fresh hope for our future. It is time to worship. And as we do every week and happens across the nation, we begin our worship by lighting a chalice, a custom that unites us with almost every UU congregation in the world. And I'd like to invite Rebecca Riggs to do that for us.
Good morning. For those of you here and for those of you at home, please join in our chalice lighting words as we continue our gathering tradition of lighting the flame. We kindle this flame, symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to work for justice.
Okay, I think I'm going to get a little teary. Good morning, welcome back. Look at all of my friends who have come today. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I am Marcy Bodo, and I'm your Director of Faith Formation Ministry here at Valley UU. Now is the time for our Time for All Ages, so if you are joining us on Zoom, it's the time to bring your children in front of the screen so they won't miss out on this special TFAA today. Take a moment to remind you that we do have pastoral care associates for you. In person today, Rosalind Hawkins. If you need a listening ear after the service, she will hang around for a bit and be available for you. If you are on Zoom, then you can use the chat feature to contact Joanne Smith. Just remember, don't use chat during the prayer or the sermon. So our Time for All Ages today, as a way of welcoming us back into our in-person services, we had a stuffy friend sleepover. It was better than that made it sound. So Haley and I worked together to give a special time, because we couldn't invite the children back to spend the night. We invited their stuffy friends. We had a COVID-safe sleepover. We called them Stuffies, and I'm going to introduce you to the Stuffies and the fun that we had today. Here's a little peek into our sleepover. So it starts by introducing the children and their friends that joined us. I had this on a timer, so maybe. Oh, technology, it's lovely. Maybe a click. There we go, here are some of our friends. Olaf. So we started out by lighting a chalice and creating a covenant. We spent a little bit of time playing with Legos. Olaf building an igloo. Those two became very close friends. Oh, oh. And that's what we did. Okay. So we came to the sanctuary, we learned some songs, we did a little sing-along. That was just a preview. Oh, going backwards. Piano, there we go. Spent some time on the playground, of course. Woody always wants to be in charge, doesn't he? We stopped by the Green Sanctuary Garden. Little pumpkin for the season. Oh, we had to have snack. Had little juice boxes and goldfish. Then we had some quiet game time because it was getting kind of late then. I think that cheetah liked having that lion card. Do you remember Chutes and Ladders? Snakes and Ladders also it's called, yeah. We put on a nice quiet short movie just to get settled down for the night. Beanbags are always a favorite with the kids. Oh, and then 2 of the friends read books to us. Very nice. We had a big elephant sleeping bag that we spread out on the floor, and they all snuggled up with their blankies underneath. Oh, except the eagle. He wanted to sleep up in the plant in the little tree. And then this morning, we gave them all sheets of paper with Alice the Chalice, and they did some coloring time before we wrapped up so they could see their human friends. We are looking forward to more time with the humans. We are going to have the children who are going to class meet us outside on the patio now. If we can do this quickly and quietly, please. And friends. We are looking forward to more time with the humans. We are going to have the children who are going to class meet us outside on the patio now. If we can do this quickly and quietly, please.
Well, welcome. I'm Katie Seifert, the Director of Music Ministries, and I'm so happy to be here with you this morning. I think the smiles on the Stuffy's face mirror our smiles this morning, gathering together. Let's join in song in our first song, Do Not Leave Your Cares at the Door, as we come into our house once again, our place of worship, our place of gathering, and to extend our arms to those online as well. As a reminder, if you are in person, please hum along for our safety, and if you are at home, you can sing along.
Leave your cares at the door. Do not leave them there when you come into this place. Be open to forgiveness and transformation. Come on in, you are welcome here. And do not leave your cares at the door. Oh, bring your pain and sorrow and joy. There's a place for them upon the altar of life. Be open to forgiveness and transformation. Come on in, you are welcome here. And do not leave your cares at the door. This is a place of grace, a place of losing and finding our way upon the winding road. Meeting and parting, stumbling and starting over. Leave your cares at the door. Do not leave them there when you come into this place. Be open to forgiveness and transformation. Come on in, you are welcome. Come in, and do not leave your cares at the door. Amen. Amen. Amen.
I am Rebecca Riggs, and I'm your worship associate this morning. I want to welcome you all who've been able to join us this morning. There aren't a lot of places you can go these days where you know you are surrounded by caring people who are drawn together in an extended family. VUU is definitely one of those places. And if you are a visitor this morning and don't really yet feel part of that family, well, we hope that you keep coming so we can get to know you better and you can get to know us. We know everyone here brings talents and visions, and we so hope that you will share with us over time. So if you are visiting and would like to know more about our community or Unitarian Universalism in general, and if you are on Zoom, I invite you to stay into the main room when we go to our breakout sessions at the end of the service. We'll get a chance to welcome you more personally. If you're here in the sanctuary, although we don't have a welcome circle at the moment, please do stay around and visit with us so we get to know you better. And for all of you here in person, what a wonderful feeling of coming home. Isn't it great? It has been a long time since we have been able to all be invited back to worship here together. I know it doesn't feel quite back to normal yet. Many of you are still joining us on Zoom, but it's a step along the way, and it is so good to see you all. Today, Reverend Wooden is talking about James Luther Adams' 5 smooth stones of liberal religion. I'm sure he will be telling you about all 5 of them, but when I looked them up, it was the first one that really resonated with me. It says, religious liberalism depends on the principle that, quote, revelation is continuous. In other words, our religious tradition is a living tradition because we are always learning new truths. We put a high value on being open to new experiences. I want to share with you this morning a story about being open to new experiences that change your perspective. I haven't believed in heaven for a long time, since I was a kid. This life on earth is what I know, and another afterlife and the concept of heaven just didn't fit in with my somewhat intellectual or scientific approach to life. But then my son Eric died. For months after he died, when I couldn't sleep, I would often go to the computer and try to write out these overwhelming feelings. Because, you can type and cry at the same time. One quiet, very early Sunday morning, a few months after Eric's death, when I sat down at the blank screen and tapped the space bar to bring up the home page, it wasn't the home page that appeared. Instead, it was a picture of the universe full of stars. Then it blinked, and the picture changed to another starry night, the Milky Way. Then it disappeared, and a third photo appeared of a beautiful full moon. That image stayed for several more seconds. It seemed like forever at the time, and I think I was holding my breath. And then, with a final blink, it disappeared. And our homepage finally came on the screen. I can't describe to you how that experience changed me. I felt like Eric was telling me that he was out there. He was one with the universe. Maybe far away in the stars, but still somehow connected. Not heaven, but he wasn't completely gone either. I later asked my husband if he had changed any of our photos or changed the homepage in any way. He said no. He'd done nothing, added no nude pictures. For months, I held my breath every time I sat down to the computer to bring it up out of sleep mode, hoping for a repeat. But it never happened again. And now, I always go outside when there is a full moon, and I just look up and say to myself, sometimes out loud, I miss you. I love you. Now, I would be embarrassed to tell some of my friends or family members that story. Some would respond with, well, when did you go all foo-foo and believe in the supernatural? Others in my extended family would be so happy that I finally recognized that Eric was in heaven with God. But here, in this liberal religious faith home that I have, I know I will not be judged, but encouraged to find my own way, even if most of you have very different experiences and may see the world very differently. My sense of what comes next has changed, and it's still in flux, and that's okay. What a blessing to be in a community that values our spiritual journey, not common and final answers. Revelation is continuous, and we honor the search for truth and meaning. So again, welcome to Valley UU congregation. It's wonderful to be with you all, both in person and virtually, as we explore our faith together. And now let us continue our worship as we honor the gifts that we bring to this community.
Was it W.C. Fields who would say, Godfrey Daniels, whenever something was not where it was supposed to be. They don't teach us to raise money in seminary, but that is a job that you get. But I learned that it's not raising money, it's raising hope. That it's not fundraising, it's friend raising. Offering, that slide you probably just saw, it means to give, to offer. Giving implies gifts. Here, this is for you. Gifts are presented, which is why we call them presents. And presents in English sounds just like presents with a C. And what greater offering can we make today than your presence? I think everyone here feels richer than they imagined just by being here today. Your time. Your time is the only currency we really possess. The giving of an hour, even a minute of your attention. Have you not had an experience where one conversation, perhaps unplanned and unexpected, lasted for days, if not a lifetime? I used to smoke a lot. In my first parish, I had a member who didn't see me smoke because I don't smoke in the pulpit. But I visited her at work one day and I lit up and she said, you know, you don't look like a smoker. And a year later, I wasn't. A chance conversation, a moment of being seen in a new way. That's what each of you is to this community. you are giving by your presence. But in order to do that, to provide this place, this context for being present, we need you to sustain it. And so we do ask you to contribute from your wealth to the commonwealth of a common faith. Tick, text, click, email, telephone, Venmo, PayPal, write a check, bring a bag of nickels, whatever it is. When you do that, you make this what Isaiah called a house of prayer for all people, to bring your spirit and be welcome.
It's going to happen every time. Let's take a moment now to center ourselves. A moment where we take a pause to remember, to release, whatever we need to do to come into that presence in the present moment. I'd like to read words by Rabindranath Tagore called The Stream of Life. The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth and numberless blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. It is the same life that is rocked in the ocean cradle of birth and death, in ebb and in flow. I feel my limbs are made glorious by the touch of this world of life, and my pride is from the life throb of ages dancing in my blood this moment. We're blessed this morning by Angie Zun. She is a first-year doctorate student studying piano performance at ASU, and she's going to allow us that moment to come into our presence in that present moment to her beautiful music, Be Thou My Vision.
You could scarcely get a better prayer than we just had. But we think words matter. And so I'll try to find a few. If you know that hymn, it's in our gray book. The words were written by Thomas Michelson. I knew him. He is now of blessed memory. Served the first parish in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is where James Luther Adams would worship from time to time. If you notice the wonderful hymn we started with, the words were by Norman Naylor, another colleague now of blessed memory, who served the same church I grew up in, though not at the same time. And we met each other when we were both working in Texas. Why am I telling you this? Because every Sunday I cross paths with my past in word or music, and that fabric of being becomes palpable. I hear their names, I see their faces. Each one of you has an analog in every church I've served. I've met all of you all of my life. And so the prayer today is that we might be given the grace, the goodness, the revelation of seeing in all everyone that you know. In Dickens' Christmas Carol, Scrooge ends up struggling with the ghost of Christmas past who had shown him things he didn't want to see. And he was troubled because in looking at the ghost, it says, in some strange way, that face contained fragments of every face it had shown him. When your memories are sad, that can be very harmful and difficult, but here we bring forth the faces of those we love. And so I see in Anne or in Linda or Jim, in Gary and all of you whose names I have yet to know well, fragments of every face I have known. And I say amen, that it may ever be. I'll just let that be enough.
Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere, its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love.
Oh my goodness. There's a lot of emotion in the room today, and that's just fine. And there's a lot of emotion out there in Zoom land too, because you're present to us as well. When I first got here, I didn't get to see this space very much because you put it to another use. I boasted to my colleagues coast to coast that this congregation didn't just close its sanctuary, it transformed it into a shelter for the homeless, something I saw no other congregation do. You have right to be proud and to boast of that yourself, because if any congregation walked the walk of this pandemic, you did. But that meant I suffered a personal loss. Not only were we not worshiping here, this was someone's home, so I didn't really know the space. But then when they started moving to different locations, which is appropriate, I got a chance to poke around here and there, and I discovered you have a library. What UU church doesn't have a library, after all? And it's made of books donated by people here, there, and everywhere, so it isn't exactly the Library of Congress in terms of complete collections. But to my surprise, and if you're you understand why I said this, there were actual volumes of theology in your library, including all 3 volumes of Paul Tillich's systematic theology. Now, you should know that Paul Tillich was the mountain we all had to scale in seminary about 50 years ago. He had died just a few years earlier and towered over all the other names in liberal religion at the time. He was a refugee from Nazi Germany, a colleague with such momentous figures as Barth and Bultmann and Heidegger. His works were everywhere on most syllabi. His books were in my library, which I purchased in that first year in seminary. I have them all and have read almost none. And so when I saw them on the shelf, I said, that's a sign. I should read these books, and I have, page by page, with care and diligence. In my apartment, I have digested the very book that sits at home on my shelf in Michigan. I'm approaching the end. But fear not, I will not preach on 500 pages of German Lutheran theology this morning. But I'm mentioning him because the reason he is so well known is because he was introduced to the American religious establishment by 2 people. One of them, Reinhold Niebuhr, one of the other towering names in American theology, and the other was James Luther Adams, the Unitarian Universalist scholar who met him when Adams was visiting Germany and helped to spirit him out and rescue he and his wife from the Third Reich. So why would a UU academic scholar of religion be interested in Lutheran theology? And yet it is a fact that James Luther Adams' work was deeply affected by Paul Tillich, and that means you've been affected by him too. Kind of, if you got a disease from a person who got it from a person before that. In fact, the story is told that when James Luther Adams had to go to defend his PhD thesis, which was on Paul Tillich, there was only one question asked of him at the University of Chicago Divinity School. The chair of the committee looked at him and said, "What should we know about Tillich?" That's how expert he was at that time. This week and for several weeks to come, I'm going to be describing ways of understanding liberal religion. I know liberal religion because, and I use the term liberal religion, not Unitarian Universalism, for 2 reasons. One, fewer syllables. Second, because we are not unique in many of our thoughts and beliefs. It is possible to think no one else is like us, and it's simply not true. Something many of you folks should know is that many of us UU clergy went to school with other liberal Protestants, Catholics, Jews, academics of all kind, and when we went to class, we discovered, shocking though it may appear, we agreed more than we disagreed. Then we scattered to our various denominations and hole up in our creeds and defend the ramparts of difference. I am hoping that you will learn that we stand more to gain by being closer to one another than by being separate. Adams was a prolific teacher and writer, though not of books, of essays and articles, and these were often compiled and edited, including one that was published the year I was married, 1976, called Guiding Principles for a Free Faith. And that's the essay from which the 5 smooth stones is extracted. And these are what I'm going to talk about today. While we dearly and rightly love our 7 principles and tout them constantly, if not endlessly, This is not the only way to describe us. And if it were, we would be a very narrow people indeed. You could say that those 7 principles we are so fond of arise from those 5 smooth stones. They are in some ways the foundation for all of our subsequent principles. So now let's get on to them. You already heard about the first one. Revelation is not sealed. That's actually a phrase from an old Unitarian hymn. You might run into it from time to time. Adams, though, puts it this way. Here are his words briefly. Religious liberalism depends on the principle that revelation is continuous. It didn't stop with the last page of the Bible. Liberal religion began as a movement by being open to the truth wherever it happens. That's not new to us. It was the great Lutheran reformer Ulrich Zwingli who said at one point, everything that is true is God's word, no matter who said it. And we take that very literally. If that word of truth comes out of the mouth of a scientist, it is sacred. If that word of truth comes out of the pen of a great novel, it is God's word. If it comes from history, if it comes from any place, anywhere, if it is true, it is sacred. History, psychology, sociology. We have professors in this room who have been discovering words of God all day, all their lives. Revelation is always happening. Every principle, though, has its weakness. And this one is that we should never be so open-minded that our brains fall out. That is to say, not everything that claims to be true is true or as true as something else. The blight of misinformation and disinformation on the internet thrives on the apparent equality of statements that claim to be true. We have a duty not only to see the truth, but to question it. Revelation is continuous, but it isn't universal. Keep looking, and as the man used to say, trust but verify. Second principle, I'm using my own words now because Adams was an academic, and academic language can be a bit boggy. My point here in my version is democracy is the best policy. Adams says it this way: all relations between persons ought ideally to rest on mutual free consent and not on coercion. Any religion open to truth, wherever it is, must be open to any voice that is saying it. If we only listen to priests, popes, experts, books, we are not hearing all the truth. That means anyone, anywhere, has something to offer, and only democracy as a principle can open the mouths of every person, including our children, including those not in the room, including those historically not heard or even seen. In this, he really is echoing Luther and the principle of the priesthood of all believers. None of us needs anyone to tell us who we are and what we need to do. But we each need everyone to help us make up our minds. Mobocracy and demagoguery are genuine dangers to irresponsible speech. There are far too many people crying fire in crowded theaters these days, even if they are online. But that risk, though real, is less risky than saying that president, that expert, that person knows more than I know and I should shut my mouth. There's a psalm in the book of Psalms, and I thought of this the day after the election. I was in Peru. I thought seriously of staying. But I remembered Psalm 146. Yes, Unitarian Universalists know Psalms. And the third verse says, "Put not your trust in princes, nor in the sons of men, in whom there is no help. They breathe their last, go to their dust, and their thoughts die with them." Put not your trust in princes of nations, of religions, of power, of wealth. Put your trust in the people and in yourself. Democracy, imperfect though it is the best policy. Third, smooth stone. Actions speak louder than words. A religion that is all talk and no action is ultimately not a religion. And by action, he means acting upon the values in the world, not just in the nice confines of the sanctuary where you know how to behave. As he puts it, Adams does, liberal religion has the moral obligation to direct one's effort toward the establishment of a just and loving community. And he doesn't just mean the church, he means the world. But at the very least, the church as well. Of course, and here is the challenge that every smooth stone brings, what constitutes justice is still imperfectly known. We prevent fanaticism by keeping the first 2 points in mind, that the word that we have is not the last word, and that the next person to speak may have something we all need to hear. Before acting, it is best to come to one spirit. Hosea Ballou, one of our great Universalist founders, says, if we agree in love, nothing that we disagree on can divide us. The discipline of love is what keeps us from becoming fanatics and keeps us engaged in the work of justice. Next, and closely connected to this, is that merely personal action is inadequate. I don't care how good you all are, and you're all wonderfully good people. But as Adams would say, there are no good people except in the kind of general sense of the good wife or the good pastor. As he puts it, we deny the immaculate conception of virtue. It must be done to become there. That is to say, the goodness will not happen unless we make it happen, not only in our inner lives, but our outer lives, not only in our communities here, but elsewhere. Religion that does not live its values, that does not walk its walk, is not worthy of believing in or even of the name religion. We all remember Pastor Niemöller, who wrote after the war, first they came for the communists, but I did nothing because I wasn't a communist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I wasn't. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up. We are always under orders to be present to the evils of the world with our promises of hope and justice. Adams adds in his work, a purely spiritual religion is a purely spurious one. If all you do is meditate, you're not doing it right. The last concept is really the hardest one for many of us to accept, but it is absolutely crucial because they're all interconnected. You can't do one without the other four. Adams says that while it may seem that the times we are in warrant grievous pessimism about the future, anyone hear something in that? That was written 45 years ago. He goes on to say the resources, divine and human, that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. That's a fancy way of saying we need more than us to get where we gotta go. Now, for non-theists, and we have plenty of them, this may be a little iffy. I don't need God. Humans can do this. We're in charge. And that's the problem. Because the universe is a whole lot bigger than us. There's a lot more going on out there than we know. And I don't mean just in the woo-woo land to which you referred. I mean, has anyone besides a few of us remembered learning that corvids are perhaps the smartest birds out there? That they have social lives, they recognize human beings, that whales and dolphins have language? We are not the only intelligent species on this planet. And I have a funny feeling we're not the only intelligent species in this galaxy. In other words, humans may be pretty smart, but they're not the only vote on this planet. Science is constantly correcting our errors about what we think is true. That's what science does. It doesn't discover new truth, it discovers new errors and reminds us not to be stupid that way again. The risk of a purely humanist reading of reality is arrogance, that we can fix it all if we just write it down in a plan and make it happen, that we're at the top of the moral and intellectual pile. If we believe in democracy among humans at some level, spiritually and morally, we must be listening to the birds, the bees, the planets, inhabitants other than ourselves. It would serve us well to keep our humility before us and admit, as John Robinson did to the Plymouth Pilgrims before they went off to the New World, that there is more light waiting to break forth from sources known and yet to be known. And that if we want a better world, it will take more than we humans to make it happen. And for that reason, we have reason to be hopeful. Because if you put all your hope in humans, it's a pretty sorry lot you're betting on. Those are the 5 smooth stones, as designated not by Adams himself, by the way, but by his editor, who knew how to organize his words a little better. But we really like that name, those 5 smooth stones. It's a nice formula. We really like that. How many of you know that it's a biblical reference? Thank you, Jesus. It's Old Testament stuff back in the Torah. Actually, not in the Torah, it's in the 1st and 2nd book of Samuel. Saul, the first king of Israel, was fighting Goliath. Who here has heard of Goliath? Raise your hand. There you go. Giant warrior for the Philistines. And he was so big that Goliath said, I'll make you a deal. If you send out 1 warrior and he can defeat me, you win. Saul looked around and said, anyone? No hands went up, except a very small hand from a young shepherd named David. Yeah, that guy, who was a boy, whose job was a shepherd. And the king said, well, you're going to need a sword, and you're going to need a shield and a helmet. And David put it all on, and it was so heavy he couldn't even stand up. So he took it off, and he went down to the wadi, the wash, rooted around in the bottom and found 5 smooth stones, because you see, when you're a shepherd, you carry a slingshot, and wolves were always trying to poach his sheep. So he knew how to flick a stone to knock off a wolf. When David appeared, Goliath laughed, ha, 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 just like those giants in the movies. David placed a stone in his slingshot. Goliath prepared to charge on David. David spun his slingshot. Goliath approached. David shot, and he caught Goliath in the forehead, killing him flat dead. The weak boy took down the big, strong man. That's a lesson for you and me. You don't need the arms of theology. You don't need the sword of majesty. You don't need power. You just need 5 smooth stones to bring down the powers that be. All the great religions started like that. Who was this shepherd Moses telling Pharaoh he was coming to set his people free? Ha, 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 ha. And yet, in the story, it was Pharaoh who fell and not Moses. Jesus in Jerusalem, dusty guy from up north who talked funny with a Galilean accent. But who remembers Pontius Pilate except for Jesus? Muhammad in the desert, sitting in a cave, hearing a voice, fleeing to Medina, coming back and establishing Islam. The Buddha, a man alone, meditating under a tree in Bodh Gaya, India. And from that sprung a religion. In the end, it is always the simplest things, the humblest things that prevail over the complex and elaborate notions of power and might. We UUs are very small, rather ragged, generally powerless, kind of pathetic. To be merely a sanctuary from the world, though, a place to hide from the Goliaths out there, is unworthy of our values. The very antithesis of James Luther Adams, of Paul Tillich, of Ulrich Zwingli, of Jesus or Moses or Muhammad. We have 5 smooth stones. I knew Jim Adams personally. He taught at my seminary one year. He was already in his 70s, maybe 80. I was in my 20s. He spent a spring semester with us, and I was there along with the other students. We hung on his words. He was a great storyteller. That year, another student and I, now retired, she down in Tucson and I here, we were both together. She was the only out lesbian that we knew of in the clergy life, Sandy. And we were the only two in our seminary who identified as, are you ready? Unitarian Universalist Christians. So we decided we should hold a Maundy Thursday service. If you're not familiar with it, that's the institution of the Lord's Supper, or some people call it the Last Supper. Only a few attended, more than a few mocked us. Students, we're humanists here. We don't go into that old, antiquated Bible stuff. Get with it, Fred. We're beyond that. Only a few attended, including Jim and Margaret Adams. Forgive me. I'm a very sentimental man. I ask your forgiveness. And it remains among the more powerful moments in my clergy life that I delivered communion to Jim and Margaret Adams and fed them the bread and wine. And he took it from me. I ministered to him. And if there is a UU act that I have experienced that means more than anything, that is it. That is the man willing to admit I had something to say, that he saw me as an equal, not as a better, that he saw me embodying our faith and my courage to do it, and that I was willing to watch my faith in action that day. Have you experienced an act of great acceptance? Then that person was a Unitarian Universalist that moment. Have you offered one? Then you have to. Are you a place where that could happen? My job as interim minister is quite simply to help you make room for your future. Not my future, your future. To encourage you to follow the words of a hymn that I grew up with that says, a freedom that reveres the past but trusts the dawning future more. That's hard, even for me, even for you. And yet it is unquestionably the spirit that animated our ancestors, that animates you, and will animate the people who have yet to come to this community. 2 weeks from now, I'm going to address the challenge of uniting the past and the future. For now, try to remember that it takes only one well-slung stone to kill a giant. And we have 5. We have no cause to give up hope now. Katie, would you help us sing our final hymn?
Wow. Amen. Jamai, it is so. Thank you, Reverend Fred, for that powerful message. I found myself nodding multiple times, a swelling in my heart as I remembered why I chose this place as my home, why this is my house of worship, a place of many Davids with 5 smooth stones. In lieu of that sense of praise and thanks, let's take it a step further and sing in our final hymn, for all that is our life, I give praise and thanks. Please hum along and sing along to our friends on Zoom.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, us. For each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. And all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
To our wonderful accompanist who will be playing in just a moment, just wait a little bit. I want to say thanks, Shujini, and I want to say thank you to all of you for being here today. A few closing words before Rebecca will help us extinguish the chalice. Those same words from that same hymn, a freedom that reveres the past, but trusts the dawning future more and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. It goes on. Prophetic church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love. Proclaim the truth that makes us free. Rebecca?
As we close our service this morning, join me in saying our chalice extinguishing words. Though we extinguish the chalice, our connection to each other and this community remains. May its light guide us as we walk with justice, speak words of love, and fill our world with compassion until we meet again. For those of you who need to leave, blessings in the week ahead, and we hope you'll join us again next week. For those of you who can stay, we will have our postlude and then breakout groups on Zoom. And I invite you all to join us outside on the patio for some time to reconnect. For those of you, for all of you, blessed be.
Thank you so much. That was just beautiful. Like that? Well, you know, if you're want to, you might be able to come back and play sometime. Thank you for your visit. Hope we'll see you again.
Thank you so much. Are you just starting at ASU or have you been there for a while? At ASU? Oh yeah. So where did you go to school before? Okay, yes. Okay, yes. Very good. Very good. So you've been here for a while in the United States?
I apologize. Those of you who are in the main room on Zoom, you can unmute yourselves now.
Oh, okay. Oh, very good. We're so glad you came for us.
Hey, everybody. I was in a breakout room by myself, so I came back to the main room.
And sometimes I've been in, but not anything like this. I'm also interested. So you had
Jim, you can take down the slide. And those of you who are in the main room, you should be able to unmute yourselves now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you hear my comment before? I was in a breakout room by myself. I only had one person.
Then your last one.
And, you know, I talked to myself, but.
Sometimes too long. And this,
Those of you who are here in the room, you can talk to the people that are on Zoom if you wish to. If you want to talk to them, you can go up to the podium mic if you wish to. Or you can come back here and talk through this mic to the people on Zoom.
Hey, I had a question.
Jim, you're muted.
Are you guys
Can you
allowed to
unmute
sing?
yourself?
Oh, I don't know who she's talking to.
Go on. I'm sorry. I didn't have anything to say.
Oh, I thought you were talking, and I just wanted to let you know you were muted.
Good. Thanks. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
That's it.
Are you guys allowed to sing in the sanctuary or just hum along right now? I was just curious.
What was that, Eileen?
Are you allowed to sing or just hum in the sanctuary right now?
Hold on.
I think the guidance is that you're not supposed to sing indoors, and that's the reason for Katie recommending that the people who are there to hum.
Right.
Is so that they're not singing.
Yeah, I guess even if you're wearing a mask, because that could increase, it doesn't prevent 100% of your breath to leak out.
Of church events, choir events being super spreader events.
And that's like CDC guidelines, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I think that they're working really hard to follow guidelines that are rational to follow.
Right.
I think they're following, the CDC and the FDA recommendations and the UUA guidelines and,
yeah. Are you at home, Jim?
Well, actually, yes, I'm living at my grandmother's in Redondo Beach.
Oh, nice. Okay.
My grandmother's she's 101.
Wow.
And so she was in hospice care since she had a stroke last December, but she kind
Oh
of
my goodness.
graduated out of hospice and now she's back into regular home health care.
Okay.
And I'm part of the whole home health care picture, which means I'm
Yeah.
nighttime shift for 5 nights a week.
Oh gosh. Wow.
And so, you know, it works out pretty well. I'm here in Redondo Beach and
Yeah.
I'm handy to get around and all that. So,
Oh, very good that
but
you're
I'm
able
able to do all
to
this
do
kind of
that.
stuff remote.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened with the breakout rooms, or I mean, maybe there weren't enough of us to be in every group, you know. Yeah.
I think what happens is that normally there's this moment of time while that slides on the screen where
It says join.
some people are leaving and some people are sticking around, and then she selects how many breakout rooms and how many people per breakout room. But if you happen to be part of like 5 people and then go into a breakout room and just at the last moment 4 of them just disappear,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it doesn't cross level it. You know, it does it fairly early on, and so there can be
Right.
situations where you have a breakout room with a lot of people and some with none. Hello.
Hi, Katie.
Really, they just run really tight quality control.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Oh, the
I realized
mic is muted. I can't hear Katie or Libby.
Yeah, they're.
Oh, can you hear me?
There
on
you.
this microphone?
Oh, I can hear you on the mic. Oh, that's cool.
See, it's a tricky thing with that machine because all the input and output go through the soundboard. So it's not as simple as just having a microphone on the computer.
Oh, okay. Right. So yeah, I was asking Jim if he knew like about if you're humming or singing, but right now you're recommending people hum indoors. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm allowed to do right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully that'll change soon. I think just getting people in the same building will start
Is
to
a good
subside
step.
some of those fears, maybe.
Yeah, it's a great first step. That's
really hard
good.
not to sing along.
Yeah.
But
that was
that's
good.
what our COVID team recommends right now, especially with the congregation. And I'm working on them with allowing the choir to sing.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
that'll be the first step.
We're actually
that
hearing
happens,
Katie.
then I could see the congregation singing soon after that. Can you hear me?
We're actually hearing Katie's voice come through, I think, up at the front of the sanctuary instead of the computer that she's on right now. So.
It's probably
so everyone hears it. Oh yeah.
Are there more people in breakout sessions right now?
Well, there should be. There's some, but my room had just me, and I had trouble because not trouble, but I wanted to stay and listen to the pianist, and so I didn't go to the breakout room right away. So yeah, and then I waited, and then when I went to the breakout room, it was just me. So then I came back here. But like Jim was saying, you know, people they stay on, but then they don't go to the breakout room. But then there's that lag time between dividing up who goes to what breakout room. It's all right.
I bet we can allow more time between
before.
So
yeah.
people can listen to the postlude. Yeah.
Well, don't have that musical piece at the end after the chalice.
It's true. We started adding that once we were doing in person.
Oh.
So,
yeah.
We could do. I think we could do that, and then that allows people if they need a break, like a bathroom break too.
Yeah.
For the breakout sessions.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Eileen. She was saying how she likes listening to the music at the end, but then she misses a breakout.
She inadvertently broke the breakout.
Let me break this down.
Well, it was nice seeing you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great to see everybody in the
on for a second.
Sanctuary. Yeah. Okay, cool.
I want to know why Jim didn't send Mr. Sanchez back in the background there to the stuffy sleepover.
I think his attorney